which took place. Are you feeling better now?
Yeah, better. After post-operation, I had again some health problems. So now better than last week.
Okay, so now everything's okay now.
Yeah, it's it's fine now.
Okay, so I think perfect. I think whatever medical things better that the things happened and everything became all right. So that's definitely a good thing. But what I'm going to do is, Prem, is that I'm going to ask you to tell me about yourself later. First, now I've started this, which I started my last symposium. Please tell us about the symposium, whatever your understanding of the symposium is. Please, these are the speakers of the symposium. So, what have you seen any of the sessions? What have you understood about the topic and the symposium? Please.
Yes, actually, when before starting the mediation, before starting the session, I got my health problems, so I could not manage time to watch any sessions. But my understanding about the symposium is that means in our community, whatever we do practice for the conflict resolutions, either in a traditional mediation way or by the arbitration. So those practices are expected to be shared here, and then also not all, but some sessions partially I had watched, and I understood and learned that there are lots of practices in different country contexts, in different community contexts about the practices of dispute resolutions. So here, the theory and practices are one part in the modern society and in the modern state, and theory and practices in the traditional societies and communities who have their own kinds of institutional systems in their societies. They have their own way to resolve the disputes. It's not only disputes, any kinds of governance issues in their communities. They have their one traditional practices, means they are guided by their own values and principles. But of course, we can find in a wider societies being practiced the modern theory and practices of the disputes. So here there are two things. One is, of course, arbitration, and another is mediation that we need to distinguish. So here, basically, as an indigenous person, my focus will be more on the mediation, how our indigenous communities in the Asian context, particularly in some country context, we resolve the disputes. We govern our societies for the peace and order, for the social harmony, for the integrity, for the fair and just society. So those things can be important part that I will be sharing. So overall, I also partially listened David sharing, and it was quite interesting. So of course, since there are a number of speakers, they already shared their experiences, their knowledge. It's quite interesting. Hope in future I will manage time to watch some, but of course might not be all.
But no one can ever watch what I do. I've understood that. But whatever you can get time. But Prem, you have to tell us about yourself. That's more important.
Myself, I'm Prem Singh Tharu, and I'm originally from Nepal, from Tharu Indigenous communities. And we Tharu Indigenous communities are the second biggest indigenous population in Nepal. And the Tharu communities you can find in India as well. So we Tharu Indigenous communities are very distinct in Nepal, but of course in Nepal there are 59 legally recognized indigenous communities, and all those indigenous communities in Nepal means have their own one customer institutions, one self-governance practices. But here I'm working with Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact since 2016 under environment program, and we work on the indigenous people's human right, and we work on the environmental issues, either it is relating to climate change, how it impacts to these peoples, and how in these peoples we are practicing our traditional environmental sustainable good practices to protect the environment, to mitigate the climate change. And also we work on our language issues, our indigenous language. We work on biodiversity. We work on livelihood. We work on land rights, forest rights, and rights over the resources of the indigenous people. So as a regional organization in Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact basically does the regional and global advocacy in different human rights mechanisms to raise the issues of indigenous peoples and to be addressed in those international policy documents, either it is relating to climate change, human rights, business and human rights, environment, biodiversity, land, forest, and so on. That's all about my short introduction. But again, academically, I'm a student of anthropology first, then I did my master's in law from the National University of Ireland. So I'm both a student of law and anthropology, and this indigenous peoples and our practice of mediation for conflict resolutions are very integrated with my area of interest as well as with my academic backgrounds. So it's my great pleasure to get this floor here to share my experiences and understanding. Thank you very much, Vikram.
Thank you very much, Prem, for being part of the symposium. Now it is your show. I am listening. Whenever you want me to come in, I'll come in then. Otherwise, please. And if you don't want me to come in, I won't come in. Totally yours.
That's fine. Sounds good. Okay. So let's start. We indigenous peoples have our one value, principles, wisdom, knowledge, and our customer institutions are actually formed based on all those value, principles, wisdom, and knowledge. And actually those knowledge, those wisdoms or beliefs are the core elements that guide to the whole society. Basically, we indigenous people, we believe in our one customer institutions is not just for only mediation, but also for all kinds of development activities. Means to run the society, to govern the society, we believe in our own customer institutions. And in our own customer institutions, it's you can find very participatory approach. Means there is no any imposed decision. Means any kinds of decisions are made or taken in full consent. So it's not like the democracy means voting the majority group of people, but there is more about the consent. Means the consensus is there always as the core element. So the consensus is established there in order to do any work. If there are consciousness, then that consciousness doesn't lead to create any kinds of conflict. Of course, human beings are very diverse. We have different thoughts. We have different, means individual interest. We have different individual level of understandings and the influence. But when you go in the community, that's the commonality you find is the collective approach. Collective approach means that collective approach guides everyone to be at the same room, in the same boat. So whatever decisions are made, those decisions are made jointly, collectively, and those decisions are equally respected and implemented by the entire communities. But here, most important thing is in our indigenous communities, means we have the committees, or you can say the team, and those teams are selected by the communities. Sometimes we don't prefer to use the term elected, because if there are elections, then elections, it try to push some fractions, try to insert some kinds of conflict of interest or the divide and rule approach. So we don't say we don't believe in much elected system, but we believe in the selected system and completely participatory approach. So just if you let me say about our Tharu customary institutions, we say burghar, BARGAR, burghar. That burghar system in our Tharu Indigenous community is a well-established institutional governance system, and that burghar is a team, means is a team, and the team members are selected every year in the mid of January. In Nepali calendar, we use Baishak, Zed, Ashar, Sawan, Bhadau, means the months we count, 12 months. So means the Magh months which we count, the first of Magh, it's almost mid of January, maybe 15, 16 January, or sometimes 14 January. So this, not the first of Magh, but the second of Magh month, we organize an assembly. That's the general assembly of our community. And that general assembly means from each household, there are mandatory participation. So people, they gather at a place in the village, and they greet each other, they share happiness, they share joy each other, excitement each other on that festival. And on the second day of that festival, they select a new committee. So the committee has 1 year's term, 1 year's tenure. So they select the committee members, and in the committee members, the head of that committee is called burghar. That's why it is named also burghar system. So burghar leads to the team members, and there are watchmen, there are what's called messenger, there are secretary, there are treasurers. So different positions are shared there, and all those positions, in all those positions, the villagers, they select the persons. So, but there is no any limitations or any kinds of boundaries, or means demarcation that only one person can be in that position. Means anyone interested, if they can express the interest and really want to do the social work, they can take part. And in the full consent, in the participatory approach, the team members are elected. And after the election, the whole year's development plans or any kinds of rules and regulations of the village are formed, or if there are any kinds of amendment or revision, that's also done. Initially, all those community rules and regulations not used to be in the written form, but these days, since many community members are educated and means documentation is also very important. So these days, documentations are also done. Means if there are any kinds of penalties are suppose decided, then those penalties on what cases applied, all those decisions are noted there and written in the paper. So then the whole year's any kinds of conflicts, any kinds of disputes, if it is seen in the community, if it occurs, then the whole villagers, they gather. And that gathering is called Khala. Khala, K-S-Y-A-L-A, Khala. Khala means the meeting. Khala is Tharu term, Tharu word. And in that Khala, in that meeting, the villagers again, they gather. And the talks, the interactions, or the dialogue, it is led by the burgher and other peoples who have the knowledge and who have the understanding on those issues, on those subject. They also actively share their experiences. So yeah, means that meeting, means organized under the burgher systems are the very active institutions. So it's not only conflict, but if there are any development activities going to happen, suppose road construction, digging the canals for irrigation, or cleaning the canals, cleaning the village road, or if there are any weddings in the village, or if there are any date rituals, or if there are any other kinds of works in the community. So all those works are done together. But very important thing is, before doing any work, means during that festival, means on the 2nd of March, so decisions are made which activities will be done when. So, but again, before doing that activity, suppose some activities are planned in July or in the August or in the September, then before taking place, before starting that work, there is again the preparatory meeting. So in that preparatory meeting, the whole villagers, they gather, and they again means make the frame how we start the work, or if there is need of budgetary things and how much we need to collect in the village, or if there are any funding opportunity from the outside, then that also decided to access. So all these decisions are made, and because of that very systemic way of governance systems, it's very easier to mediate any kinds of dispute or conflict in the community. And another thing, as David was saying, in the mediation, there is respect, there is harmony, there is recognition, or Pascal, the reward or celebration in a very peaceful manner to develop any enabling environment and respectful environment. So the same practice is done in the Tharu communities. So it's not only in Tharu communities, even in India, if you go in the indigenous communities in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, there are many indigenous communities, Urao, Kharia, Munda, and others. So they have also similar kinds of practices. So in our Tharu communities, if sometimes the challenge regarding the mediation we face is the political influence, because we say human beings are the political animal, political creatures. So because of that, means there are many political parties active, because Nepal is a multi-democratic party, and there are lots of political parties these days, and you rarely find the villages uninfluenced from the political conflict of interest. The villages are divided into different political wings like Congress, Democratic, leftist, this and that. So because of that kinds of influence, sometimes it's quite challenging. And because of that influence, what I'm saying, means burgher systems, running of the burgher systems, each year mid of the January, the selection of the new committee members are sometimes being influenced, because it should be voluntarily, and simultaneously the villagers, they nominate themselves, or they are nominated by the someone. But these days, in some villages, not in many, but few villages, we can find the selection of the burghers, it divides into different political parties, leftist, democratic, rightist, this and that. So that challenges we can find. And if there are some conflict or disputes in the community, so there are those political activists, so-called political activists, they enter and they try to make it complicated. They don't want to let the society solve it, but they try to, steer it and make it dirty and, what's called invisible. They don't want to let the people settle it themselves. So they take favorism of their one group, and if one political party is taking favorism or boosting to one group, then another political party they come and support or try to manipulate to another group. So these kinds of challenges we can see now. But again, where the communities are very strong, they don't let to enter the outsiders, or they don't let to enter the influence of these political dirty games. So still the practices are found very strongly being practiced. The most important thing in terms of dispute resolutions are, it's case by case, not in all cases, but during the village assembly decisions, means the rules and regulations made are very socially acceptable. It's not challenging. It's not very much challenging to implement those rules and regulations. Because if any villagers, they suppose make any mistake, or if they violate the social norms and values, and they have to pay some level of penalty, suppose 100 rupees, means not even $1, or means around $1 if they make any mistake, or if anyone but disobey the collective decisions, then they need to suppose do the 1 day or half day extra voluntary work, social work. Means if the villagers, they do the work, voluntary work, suppose 1 day, and the person who disobey those decisions, they may do another 2-3 hours, or the next day morning time. So that's kinds of means not much harmful and not much very discriminatory penalties are set. So means such kinds of things that let the people or make the people feel that we should not do any work that harm to the community, or that means make the community people unhappy. So these kinds of penalties let the people learn and improve their attitudes and behaviors. But again, if you see some cases of human rights violations, in those cases, mediations are very important, because the person who does any kinds of violations, or the person who gets victimized, at the end, wherever they go, either they go to the legal court process, or other quasi-judicial or judicial procedures. But at the end, the thing, it concludes in the agreement. It concludes in the consent building. So in mediation, in the community, it tries to establish the enabling environment, giving different state mechanism, institutions, and practices, how it works. and at the end, how you have to again come back to the community. Suppose if any crimes happen, then the culprits, in the name of penalty or the sentence, the person will go to the jail. But after a certain period of time, the person will be released from jail, and that person will have to come back to the community. So, but the person, suppose for 3 years or 4 years jail, and his social status, his social prestige, and the prestige of his family, as well as community relatives and all, that's too much distracted, means during that 3-4 years. And it's quite difficult to the person to come and again, means adjust in the community. So mediations, it helps to means discourage the people to do any kinds of crimes. And if anyone does, then it gives the social, means pressure or social kinds of penalty, that person really realize, oh, if I do such kinds of mistake, or if I repeat it again, it's quite difficult to survive in the community. So we should not go against any kinds of means social peace and order. So means this mediation, it's natural way that establish the people feel that they are very important for the community, and community is also very important for them. And there is the contribution of each and individuals equally to maintain the peace and order in the community, and to harmonize the community, to establish the unity, integrity in the community. So that understanding, sorry. So that understanding is it's inherited by the indigenous values, principles, and wisdoms. And all these knowledge, all these experiences are not found documented, but it is being transferred automatically from one generation to another. Like my grandparents, they used to have very strong institutions, and those institutions, those knowledge, those practices, those wisdoms are automatically transferred to my parents, and from my parents is transferred to me. But in my generations, we are not much staying at the community. For different opportunities, we are away from the communities. We go to the community for a certain period of time. Of course, we spent our childhood at the community and we learned all these things. But if we go now to the community, we feel sometimes, it's quite inspiring. And we see different kinds of complications in the state institutions, either to the judicial or administrative institutions, who are really need to be accountable and responsible to maintain peace and order, or to provide the justice to the people. So those are very complicated, and it means inaccessible in some cases, and it's unaffordable as well, and it's very time taking. So those state institutions are really very challenging. But our institutions, our institutions are very accessible, are very friendly. Means anyone can raise the issues, anyone can go and complain, means with the burger team members. And the immediate meetings are called, immediate, means gathering are called, and in a very peaceful way, the dialogues are made there, interactions are made there, and without humiliating to anyone, or without impacting to anyone's thought. It's in a very positive way. The decisions are taken forward. So those are the things. And another thing here in Thailand, in July, I was visiting one community in Mae Song province. That's the border of Myanmar, Burma as well. So there we were visiting one Lua community, and we were asking in that community that, do you have any kinds of crime in your village? They say, no, we haven't heard any kinds of crime in our village. And I asked, do you have any kinds of land dispute? They said, no. I said, why? Because we don't have the individual lands. They said, why you don't have? If you don't have the individual land, then if you want to suppose migrate Chiang Mai or Bangkok somewhere, or means in another province, then what do you have to do? You have to leave it. They said, because the village, they decide, they distribute the land, and they make the decisions in a collective way, in a participatory way, without any kinds of conflict of interest. And I asked, okay, so if I'm going to the city for 3-4 years, and means after 3-4 years, if I get back, suppose before Corona outbreak, many people were in the city. So because of the Corona, they lost their job and they returned back to the community. So means they left, suppose for 3 or 4 years. So after returning back in the village, did they get their land? Yes, we divided the land, we shared the land, we gave them the land, and we asked them how much they can cultivate, how much they can do the agriculture. So based on their capacity, based on their interest, we divided the land. So means we have very systematic way and practices that doesn't let to occur the dispute, he said. And I asked him, how do you manage, means if there are any kinds of conflict regarding the properties or other things? They said, no, there is no way to do the conflict, because our social institutions, our social governance systems are quite strong. So that has clearly defined that who will get the property, and how they will get the property. Because in the current is indigenous community in Thailand, they are in Myanmar also. So after marriage means it's not the boy or the bridegroom, means bring it's not the husband bring his wife in his home, but he has to go and stay at wife's home. So means they have already well established things that doesn't lead to come any kinds of means issue of the property. And another community is also there. Means suppose if there are 5-6 sisters, the youngest daughter has the ultimate right to take care of all those parental properties. I mean, her husband will come and stay there, so means it's well defined. So if there are means the things in a well defined manner, and the community, if they are respectfully applying those practices, the disputes or conflict rarely comes on. So those practices you can find. Yeah, and another important thing is, in the indigenous communities, at the entrance of their village, especially in India, also in Thailand, they put one stone, they write something in the stone. Suppose in India, they say it's at the entrance of the village, they say it is Patalgari. It's like the stone board. They stand at the entrance of their village. If you go in Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Jharkhand, you can see in most of the villages. So they write their provisions. they write that this is the indigenous village, means having the self-governance systems, the autonomy. They have the autonomy there. So it means they have already the well-established systems. So here in Thailand also, they in that Luwa community in Mae Hong Son province, which I was saying, in that community, they put that stone pillar at the middle of the village. So they said the village is stronger because this is the pillar of the strength of the village, and they have to respect the pillar of the village. The social institutions are the pillars of the village. Social constructions are the strength of the village. So those social constructions are there. Social institutions are there. Customary institution also we say. So those things are there that always motivate the people to respect the collectiveness, to respect the social norms and values, and to abide by. So it's quite interesting. And in the modern society, where there are influences of the outsiders or the political parties, or we can say the state institutions, in those areas, these mediations are quite challenging, that I already shared also, because those institutions, state institutions and political, modern political institutions, they force to the community people to go to the police, force to the community people to go and complain at the administration, at the court. It makes the things complicated and very what's called means time taking, and also economically, means expensive. So those things doesn't let the peace survive there. Means they try to make the society unpeaceful. They try to create disorder in the community, and even means both parties, either victims or the means the the persons, or the team, or the group who do any kinds of those bad things. So those people's even they come back, means throughout the court process, throughout the administrative process, the cases are settled in the paper, but it is not settled in their mind. In their mind, still they have ego, still they have means the revenge motive, still they have what's called conflict of interest, or still they have some kinds of means burning inside, and means the resolutions of dispute of conflict at the state institutions, that only settle in the paper, but at the real sense, it is still alive. And because of means having that alive kinds of sibling in the mind, that again create another kinds of means fatal accident in the community. So state institutions means provides the decisions, but not the justice, provides the conflict resolutions, but not the peace. So that challenges we can find. That's why if you see, the people who does any kinds of crime in the community or anywhere, means they are of course socially excluded, and they go for the jail for a couple of years, and once they get back, improve their behaviors, they don't improve their attitude, and they again do another means second round of crime, and means they enjoy to means staying in the jail. So the state institutions in our Asian context, I don't know in the developed countries in Europe, America, or Canada, or in other countries, but in the Asian context, our state institutions are not the solutions. They are not working for the permanent solutions of any disputes and resolutions. Frankly, we can say, for time being, they show a bit in the paper, but in the attitude and behaviors, it is still alive there. It is still existing. Means very few persons we can find means have improved or have left that means absurdities. But in the majority, the people, once they go to jail and they come as bold as before they did the first bad thing, they come with more strength and more courage to do something more bad things, So these challenges you can find. That's why indigenous way of mediation is very important if we really want to have our society living in the harmony, living in the peace, or if we are means really expecting the civilized society, or the means society living in the peace and order, means in the rule and order. Indigenous mediation is really very important. That what we think that the world has to learn from the good practices of indigenous peoples, because in indigenous practices there are no economic interest, there are no economic kinds of burden or economic kinds of complexity, means the problem, because economic, of course every communities, every individuals need economic things, but economy is under less priority. The priority or the value of the social respect, social norms are at the greater level, are at the top. So when people they respect all those greater wisdoms or greater social values and principles, they are afraid to do any kinds of greedy work at the community for the financial interest. Because if anyone knows in the community that someone means did any kinds of irregularity spending, suppose 100 rupees or 100 baht, $100, without consent or decision of the community, and in the meeting all these things become the public issue. So people, they say, why you spend that? This is the public property, this is our means, it's means common property. So without the decisions, without the consent, it's not good to means spend the money, or you cannot do these kinds of irregularities. Or if the person does any kinds of irregularities, it is made to pay back immediately. If the person is not in the position to pay back that amount immediately, then time is given. Okay, for how many days? How many days do you need? Or if the person said, I cannot pay in money, but I can pay, suppose, in any commodities. Suppose means $100 means he can say, okay, I can give 20 kilo of rice or 10 kilo of wheat, or means 5 kilo of mustard seed, means any kinds of food grains the person can pay. So if you see that there is like the barter system, but again it's the way, means not the money govern the community, but community governs everything, and there is no influence of the economic interest in the community. Because if there are economic interest, if there are political interest, then these two things are very harmful to the communities. If there are means if there are political interests or if there are economic interests, those things are very fundamental to spoil the community strength, to spoil the social respect, to spoil the social harmony. So in the community, if we really want to establish the good mediation as the strength of the community always needs to be away from economic and political conflict of interest. So that's my understanding. And this, my understanding is from my community, what I have learned, and from other indigenous community from different countries in Asia.
No, I
So,
think, Prem,
yeah,
I think you
thank you.
brought out such interesting things. I think we need to, of course, have these discussions because you come with a very interesting combination. Nepal and Thailand stayed away from colonization's effect because, of course, Nepal, I think some territory was given to the British, but largely they did not get that effect. So what you're seeing today is which is what we're going to discuss in that symposium, is the decolonization and the political system and the divide and rule which the colonizer did. You're kind of seeing that in the community, but you've retained those basic elements of consensus building and just the fact that it's a community. I think that part of it, because of course there is this modern concept which people try to bring in on mediation and not realizing there is much more happening within the community, which we have to be careful, which is what I was telling David also. We have to be really careful to not generalize that part. I think that's important, and I think the aspect of crimes and how it has to be dealt with, all those things have to be taken. But before that, I want to get Madhu in. Madhu is from Nepal. He was also one of the speakers. Madhu, kasto che? Are you coming in or not? Saying hi to Prem. Okay, Madhu is still. But I think this dispute-free village aspect that you gave example, there was some other meeting that I was having with some people, and they gave this example in India also, that they haven't filed any criminal case since the British left. In independent India, there has been no criminal case filed from that village. So these are things which we need to, of course, study and be able to bring out. And I think not owning land seems to be the solution of the problems. Land ownership is the one that is creating issues in this world. So how do we handle that, Prem? How are we going to handle land ownership?
Yeah, means if you see in the indigenous perspective, then land is very instrumental. It's inherent with the fundamental human rights of indigenous peoples, because we indigenous people believe on means our way of life, our indigenous practices, our knowledge, our wisdoms are inherited with the land, with the forest, with the water. And land is very important for indigenous peoples to do the practice of our customary institutions or our social cultural institutions. So if we have to do any kinds of worshipping, or if we have to do any kinds of rituals, then we have to have the land. And in indigenous communities, we have the sacred areas, we have the sacred lands. And those lands are very important for us. So it's not only in indigenous communities, in other communities also you have the sacred lands. In the Hindu communities, there are also sacred lands where people, they have to go and worship or, do the rituals. In the Muslim might be also, and in other communities. But for the indigenous communities, land is very important. And now, means I was sharing the example of Lua village in the Mehangsong province of Thailand. So I said they didn't have the individual lands. So they didn't have the conflict. Or the villagers, they manage the land. And the land is divided based on the need of the family. Means it's not that you are 10 family members, so you can have the big areas of land, and who are only 2 family members, they have very small patch of land. It's not that. So how much you want to do the farming, or you can do the farming or not. And another thing, land is very important because because indigenous peoples, our traditional occupation is mostly farming. If the people they are in the riverside or means in the sea areas, in the coastal areas, and for them it might be the fishing. So indigenous peoples who means live means Indians, it's not who, but Indians peoples, we mostly live in the remote areas, and our main occupation is the agriculture. So for the agriculture, land is very important. And but if you see our historical practices of the indigenous communities, then we used to have the collective lands. Collective lands still we find in most of the countries and communities. But now this, as you said, the colonization, new colonization, those new colonization and the detrimental laws which are being imposed, those are trying to grab our land, and our lands are being means turned into industrial areas, turned into what's called means in the urban areas, and those lands, those soils are being polluted from different kinds of development activities, or the resources are being polluted by the excessive use of the resources and exploitation of the resources. So these challenges are there. And and if you see in the context of India, India has Forest Right Act 2006, and India has Panchayat extended schedule something. It's called PESA 1996. So Vikram, please correct me if
you know better than me, Prem. You know better. You are the expert.
So the PESA Act is there, and in the Indian Constitution there is also constitutional provision, means the schedule areas, 5th schedule, 6th schedule, and in the constitutionally Indigenous peoples they have been well recognized, not for their only indigeneity, but for their self-governance. Self-governance means they have the governance of controlling, of accessing, means having ownership and all of their land and territories, territories. So in the Forest Right Act, there are two provisions. One is individual land, forest land titles, and another is community forest land titles. And in order to proceed for claiming those titles as the legal procedures, the Forest Rights Act has given clear mandate or the authority to the Gram Sabha. Gram Sabha means not the Panchayat elected Gram Sabha, means the state institution. That Gram Sabha is being talked, the Gram Sabha, which is in the existence in the indigenous communities, means they have been doing that practice as their own Gram Sabha, not the means politically elected one. So that has given means that has ensured the means land rights. So the land right issue is very important, and without land you cannot do the farming. Without land you cannot do your rituals. So if your agricultural lands, or if your means indigenous territorial lands are being grabbed, means you are displaced either in the name of industrial development or in the name of expansion of the national park or expansion of the animal means wildlife reservoirs, or means other development activities like the construction of the dam or something. So if you are displaced from there, you cannot entertain your land rights. Means where you are relocated, those relocated areas are not the fertile areas, are not having the natural resources surrounding. So you cannot do your practices. Suppose if you are from the fisheries community, means in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in India, there are Maji communities. Maji means fishing, means their traditional occupation is fishing. They are indigenous. So if they are displaced from the river bank, then means they are relocated at suppose any urban areas or close to the urban areas. Then there are no rivers, or if there are rivers, means they are not allowed to do fishing, because those areas are the conserved areas. Means if they go for any kinds of fishing, they are criminalized, they are arrested, they are means alleged different kinds of charges. So those challenges are there. So means the land rights is very important. And in terms of doing the conflict resolutions or resolutions of the dispute regarding land, it's very scientific in our indigenous communities, because in our indigenous communities, we don't use the inch, we don't use the measuring tapes, means the people, they even the single line with this, with the point of this pen, they count. So if there are such point being counted, and those points creates the partition, those points creates the seeds of dispute. So in indigenous communities, we don't have that level of measurement, but measurements, whatever we have, are open and are, means in a traditional boundary. So in the traditional boundary, you don't have, means to grid too much. So at least if there are boundaries, the boundaries should have the bigger space to walk. The boundaries should have bigger space to pass through your cart or your vehicles, which is used to take in your farm, in your agriculture areas, to harvest the agriculture products or to carry the agriculture products from your farm. So we have that kinds of boundaries. So we don't have the issues of conflict in terms of land management. But again, these state institutions, in the name of scientific land management, there are different kinds of dispute these days. The people, they are rich, but they don't have the land. They have buildings, but they don't have the land to, means stand. Means the building is only their property. It's completely cemented, concretized. So those people, they come in the rural areas, in the indigenous areas, and they try to capture the land, means in different names. So they try to means manipulate the state laws and policies and try to register those lands in their name. Those challenges we can find in India. There is a land bank policy. The land bank policy now, because of no irrigations, many lands are barren. The indigenous communities, they are not being able to do the farming. They don't have the irrigation systems. So the big areas are barren. And what the government think, that these lands are useless land, is barren. So this land is the government land, but actually those lands are not the government land. Because of not having the irrigations, they are not being able to do any kinds of plantations of their agriculture. So that challenge are there. So these land managements are very serious issues, and that what we indigenous peoples are always doing the active advocacy, and we are trying to raise in different policy advocacy mechanisms that the land rights of the indigenous peoples must be recognized, must be addressed, and must be implemented, endorsing in the national laws and policies. So that's our always, the emerging issues we raise in different forums.
Yeah, perfect. No, those are issues separate, but in terms of, I think we don't have much time, because David, who I'm going to call Spotted Hawk. David, I'm going to call you Spotted Hawk because we already have a David in the show, right, in the session. But what we might not get time to discuss would have been how the Nepalese constitution is looking at the indigenous people's rights, which I think we did not get to. So maybe we can take it up some other time. So thank you, Prem. Thanks a lot. Lovely talking to you, and what the issues you brought out. This is just a start of conversations. We'll keep discussing this. So thank you very much. And I'll have to cut this. I'll have to start Spotted Hawk session. Okay.